Hi, this is Mark Arnold with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today on the show, I have a new guest, Emmannuel Cruz, and I have a returning guest, the incomparable Kamden Spies.
You were about to say insufferable.
The insufferable. I meant to say that. You're right.
Well, that would be right.
I try to get him off the show, but he's here, folks. I can't help it. Anyway, so Manny, I was recommended by Kamden and by our mutual friend Anthony Kodarak to have you on the show. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about you. I know you can sing, and you're known as the Tooney Tenor, and you've worked with Anthony on his animation talk show. And
someone says you went to college. That's it.
Yeah, and I think you can sing opera, so you're going to do an aria right now. Go! And so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in animation and music. So we're going to give you the floor.
Ooh, this, do you want the abridged version or the?
All right, last an hour and a half, so I can say, well, yeah, thanks, gotta go.
All right, and we're done. See you later, folks. So yes, I guess my history of music and animation are intertwined. So as I like to tell people, this is my origin story. I mean, I was not from Krypton. I was not covered in mutagen or anything like that. But when my grandmother, so let's start off with my grandma. My father's parents were from Cuba, came to the States after World War II. And my grandmother, Aurora, she had a passion for opera. She enjoyed it, but she never had the opportunity to pursue it professionally. I mean, she took some lessons, and because they moved to New York, and my father and uncle were born in New York. And she loved doing it, but she, like I said, took some brief lessons. I know that she sang in some like opera choirs, like community choirs in the 60s. I have a copy of the sheet music she did for a production of Aida from Verdi. And but yeah, never really couldn't do anything with it because she was single. She had my father and my uncle to raise on her own. And then let's fast forward to the early 90s when I pop along. I was actually, yesterday was my birthday. So yep, 35 now. 35 and feeling alive. And my mother was born in Puerto Rico, and she came to New Jersey in the 80s. And one day, she's, cleaning the house, giving me a bath, whatever. And I will say, with my parents, they know nothing about music. I mean, I can't even explain an eighth note or a treble clef overwhelms them. But they've always had an appreciation for music. I mean, I always heard music growing up in my house. My father, like I said, born in New York, raised in northern New Jersey. And, my father's 70 now, and I had a healthy mix of Motown, of classic rock, a lot of Philly soul, a lot of, Memphis sound, all that kind of stuff. As I like to say, if you listen to CBS FM 101.1 in New York City back in the day, all those the oldies hits, I grew up on those. And for my mom, a lot of music from Puerto Rico, like salsa music, some merengue, a lot of Mexican bolero singers of like the 60s and 70s and 80s that she grew up listening to. But yeah, my mom would sing, in particular, La Borinqueña, which is like the kind of the national anthem of Puerto Rico. And my parents are not singers. I mean, they could sing in tune, but they need a lot of work. And then I would notice my mother getting homesick, teary-eyed and whatever. And me as a 3-year-old, Mommy, why you crying? And then one day, my mother said that when she was giving me a bath, that I just started singing, the beginning of La Borinqueña, La Tierra de Borinquen, the soil of Puerto Rico. And then, but I'm singing it with a booming vibrato voice. And they're like, where the hell did this kid pick this up from? And pretty much, I mean, I had the tenor claw or the baritone claw and everything ready to go. And then I think it was a moment where they realized my grandmother was like the ability passed on to him, because my grandmother's a huge part of my life, and rest in peace. And I have recordings of her singing stuff from Puccini, in particular La Boheme, from Madama Butterfly. And she was excited, finally, one of her grandchildren, one of the last ones, picked up the musical ability, because my brothers are not into music and neither are my cousins. And I would sing at home, stuff I would hear on the radio. again, more Puerto Rican folk songs for my mom. There's a recording somewhere I got to listen to where it's me as a 5-year-old. And I'm like, my name is Emmanuel Cruz. I'm 5 years old and I'm going to sing En mi viejo San Juan. I'm going to digitize. It's going to be my first single.
All right.
And of course, related
it's gonna
to
play in the background of this podcast one day.
I should I gotta find it.
I'm only 3 years old.
And going into the animation side, I mean, I was as sadly as I tell some other people, I consider myself the last generation of kids that grew up watching the Warner Brothers shorts pretty much everywhere. You know, I saw them on TBS. I saw, the AAP package on TBS, on TNT. Occasionally I would watch the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show on ABC7 in New York. But most of what I saw was either on public domain tapes or Nickelodeon. I was a big Nickelodeon kid. Nickelodeon was my life as a kid. And besides, watching the Nicktoons and other stuff they had on there, I loved watching Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon. And what happened with the animation side was twofold. So I vaguely remember watching Bosco on Nickelodeon. I think Bosco was pulled, 92, 93. So I was either 4 or 5 years old. And then one day, I think it was in late 2000 when I was in middle school. This is when the internet was brand new to me. And, I'm like, ooh, let me go on Yahoo for search engine stuff. And I'm like, remember those days when Yahoo was a search engine? And I'm there and just the word Bosco popped into my head. And I'm like, Bosco. I'm like, the chocolate syrup? No, the cartoon character that you used to watch as a little boy. And I'm like, and I remember like the vague image of him and whatever. And I'm like, God, I haven't thought of that in, a long time. So I go on Yahoo and I typed in Bosco. And of course, it showed me the chocolate syrup. But then I found an image of Bosco, and I think it was him and Honey. So I was like, Bosco and Honey. I was like, oh, wait, this is starting to, everything's coming back to me now. And it brought me to a website called Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, the early years, on the former Toon Zone website. And then I started reading Bosco as a Looney Tune character. I'm like, wait, what? The Looney Tunes started in 1930. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, they weren't made like, I assumed they were made, I don't know, maybe in the 60s, the 70s, whatever it may seem. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, it sparked like a light in me. I was like, I got to learn more about this stuff. And then I started going on Amazon when it was still relatively new, and I found Jerry Beck's book, the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, the complete filmography.
Which one?
And I just started the 1989 version.
The blue one?
Yeah, the blue one. I actually have my original copy. It's held bare. It was not even the covers are completely off, held together with electrical tape and highlighting and remarks. This cartoon's computer colorized. This one's edited. This one I have on DVD, and I bought another clean copy, as I like to call it. It's the holy Bible of us Warner Brothers.
But I was asking if you got the one where it's called the Warner Brothers cartoons with the different intro, or the one with.
Well, the first one I got was the 89 one, with the blue one with the characters in the cover. The green one, the original, the 81 version. I during COVID, I was like, there was a ton of books, animation books I never had that were really cheap on Amazon, and that was one of them I purchased. I also got the That's Enough folks, the one talking about black images and animation. I got the Tex Avery at MGM book. What's that?
You should have gotten Lemon's book, because Lemon's book's the better book on that.
Which one?
Chris Lemon's book of cartoon research. He wrote a book called The Colored Cartoon.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said Lemon. Okay. Yeah. I have that one as well. I bought a few. That
one's actually a better book, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one, the Henry Sampson one, the That's Enough folks. It's just more like, here's the info and specific, but I do appreciate like has newspaper clippings and all that. But the Lehman one, I've read parts of it, and I've used some of it when I was talking about the Sunshine 11 with Anthony. But again, I just got to find the time to finish reading them. But but yeah, from there, so this is now like entering 2001, and I'm reading these books, and I'm starting to get more stuff, and I was a 7th grader at a time, and weird stage in your life, and then eventually I joined. I don't know, Mark, if you were on it back then, but the old Termite Terrace Trading Post forums.
I know of it, but I was never heavy into forums, mainly because I had dial-up all the way until I was living at my dad's house, and he had all the way to like 2015. So,
Oh,
so I did not do a lot of computer stuff like that at home.
I'm sorry, I laughed at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go, of
I was going to
course
say, Kamden, were you on the Toon Zone forums back then in 2001?
he was being birthed, I think.
I was born in 2000, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, close
They
enough.
didn't. I don't know if there was many 1-year-olds on the forum back then. I was.
I'm
13,
only 1 year old.
I'm a bad
If
little
you've
boy.
seen those forums, it seems like it.
Yeah.
It seemed like it.
Yeah.
Mhm. And,
So in my case, no, I didn't type on them, but when I had access to it, I would read through them because it was just too uncomfortable and slow for my computer. I didn't watch videos and stuff on my computer. And I
No
always
offense,
asked,
but Mark, those forums are uncomfortable without the slow computer sometimes.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. And I asked my dad, for years, can't we get it? It's like, no, it's not strung up here, which I knew, but I was hoping for a different answer. But eventually I moved out and then like the year later in 2016, guess what? They finally strung it up here. It's like, which is good now. So when I visit him, it's like, hey, I can watch high speed, movies and streaming stuff, which,
Yeah. Mark, I laughed hysterically at the idea that you were still using a dial-up toy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he wrote the total television book on a dial-up computer.
Well, you don't need a fast connection to type a book. I mean,
No.
I guess now you do because I use Google Docs to do my thing. So you have to be on the internet.
Back
in those days, and when I wrote that one, I wrote it in Word. So I mean, you didn't even need a computer connection. You just need a battery or a wall socket. So and if you go way back, I had a manual typewriter or electric typewriter, whatever. Anyway,
ladies and gentlemen, the guy who wrote a book on Underdog. Underdog's history was typed with a dial-up computer.
Yay!
Yes, I don't think I've ever touched a dial-up computer before.
Well, ask Jerry Beck how he typed that Warner Brothers book of Mice and Magic. I mean, that was probably it probably wasn't even a typewriter because I mean it was probably originally a typewriter, but then it was probably typeset.
Or it could have been Will Freeball who typed it. We don't know.
It was probably typeset either by type that you have to manually set or
How do
an
we know it was
early
Jerry?
version of some sort of typesetting machine that would do it, but who knows.
Yeah.
That's
How do we know it was Jerry? It could have been Will Freeball who was typing it.
True, but I also mentioned Mice and Magic.
Yeah.
No, Jerry is probably doing all the grunt work. No, I don't know.
I don't know. I tend to disagree with that sentiment.
I know it's amazing how I used to do my fanzine Harveyville Fun Times for a number of years, all manual paper layouts, layout sheets, glue sticks, waxers, all that stuff, scissors, so.
Sounds like elementary school to me.
Yeah. And now you can do it all on Photoshop and all that stuff, but it's amazing I did it, looking back on it, but anyway, that's the way I did things. Anyway.
I'm in an art history class and I hate arts and crafts. I hate them. Like I remember having to make a baby Jesus in 5th grade, and I would literally tell my teacher, "You're wasting my time. I'm wasting yours." And I'm like,
"Can I make it on the computer?"
And we had to use scissors. We had to cut something out for an art craft. I'm like, what kind of God would allow me to do that? Would make me do that?
Yes, this is Kamden's enemy right here.
No, my enemy. Well, no, my enemy is clay or having to cut something. Scissors and I get along fine if I'm just cutting something quickly.
Elmer's school.
Why do you have that next to you?
Because I'm at my desk. I got pens and stuff here too. So I have brushes too. Even.
Yeah, what's sad is I always use a black wing pencil when writing.
I got a Ninja Turtle pencil in particular.
Now, Anthony, how did you become involved with Anthony's podcast? Because I have a gripe to pick about Anthony's podcast that I've told him that I'm going to say live on the air.
Okay. There was one other part of the origin story, but I guess we'll leave that for later. So.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you can finish.
Tell it now.
Yeah, tell it now. We'll forget.
Okay, I'll tell it now. All right. Let's see. I am merely your humble guest, so you tell me to jump, I'll say how high. So yeah, pretty much. That's when I fell down the pun intended rabbit hole, and as I tell people, I spent middle school and early part of high school, researching cartoon history and buying books and some memorabilia. Like I'm looking above myself, and I still have the Mel Blanc Speechless print that I got around that time. And I said I was doing all that instead of making friends and chasing after girls. So hey, it happens. And one of
We
one
all
of
have been there.
my one of
Yeah.
my brother's best friends, he told me you're going to get out of this phase. And what happened was like, I learned a ton about Warner Brothers history. I started recording the shorts off of Cartoon Network. People were sending me tapes of like the World War II stuff and Essential 11, and it grew to fascinate me. And then it branched out into other things that I loved, like for example, 2002. I was like, you know what? I loved the Ninja Turtles as a kid, and let me find out more. And then that's when I found out, oh, they were originally a Mirage comic in 1984. The cartoon I grew up seeing started a few months before I was born in December of 87. And then there was a new series coming out, the 2003 Ninja Turtle show, which I watched throughout high school and part of my undergrad. And then, yeah, it just went from there. It was Looney Tunes, and then it was Ninja Turtles, and then I loved Ghostbusters, and I started really getting back into that as well. And as well as my lifelong love and quoting of The Simpsons, and there's Fred Flintstone over there. So let's fast forward to years later. I still kept, I was still, reading stuff online. I was on the forums. I didn't participate as much. I was more of a reader because I was intimidated and not overwhelmed, but more intimidated by the knowledge of, guys that were posting like Jerry and Matt Hunter and other, big wigs in the forums. I met a few in person, like Nelson Hughes, because he lives in New York, and Tommy Stathis, who's, like I was like, this guy knows a ton about, cartoons as well. And then I find out, oh, he's a year younger than I am, and he's across, I just have to take a train ride to New York. And he's also responsible for making me a huge Billy Joel fanatic, so I blame him. Thanks. But anywho, years
Scott
later,
actually called Let's Blame Anthony. Sorry,
Anthony
Manny
and Tommy.
Blams.
And so I went to and with the music side of it, I started singing, as a kid, I was in choir, band. I was like, I can't think of anything else I want to do as I got older. So I went to my undergrad at Montclair State University in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. I got my degree in music education. I taught for a few years in my hometown in various places. And there was one time I was teaching and I needed something to do. And I mentioned, how I was like, oh, I learned a lot about music from watching cartoons when I was a kid. And I had one of the discs on me, the Golden Collections. And I think I put on I Love the Singer. And something about it, I mean, like, again, I still was keeping tabs of what was going on in the animation world, more of a lurker as opposed to somebody who, like, you'll never hear me say I'm a historian, I'm a researcher, I'm just an aficionado. And I even, honestly, I feel the same way about music, despite having 2 degrees in the subject, and I've been doing it almost 30 years now. But from there, I was watching I Love the Singer, and it's just something about it. I'm like, you know what? I never collected all the shorts. I got pretty decent amount on VHS and whatever, but the VHSs were sitting, in my house, collecting dust. So what I did eventually was I reached out, and I still had, I bought the Golden Collections, Porky Pig 101, all that other stuff. And I said, you know what? Let me start digitizing my collection. So I started digitizing my cartoons, putting them in my own personal hard drive. But then there was all the shorts that, like a lot of the older stuff from the 30s, a lot of the Patty Freeling 7 Art stuff, some of the Censored 11, whatever. So I managed to get copies of that thanks to Thad Komorowski. So thank you for that. And then finally, took me months of doing it, but I organized them all. I had every single cartoon ready at my disposal. And I'm like, let me watch them. And Matt Hunter was one that suggested do it in chronological order. I'm still doing it almost 5 years later. I'm in 1940 because life, but also the ones that I watched with Anthony, it helps add to my total. So so leading back to what happened with Anthony and then Kamden, this will be your cue. So I went to, I was teaching for a few years, but I have aspirations, and I still do, of being an opera singer, but I also have other interests. I enjoy singing salsa music. I started doing that a few years ago. I hated salsa as a kid. because my mom blasted it every single weekend nonstop. But now I enjoy it, and all the other music I listen to. Like I love the Doors, Billy Joel, Steely Dan, Stevie Wonder. I was listening to Sinatra before, Jersey's own Sinatra. So I went to Texas. I went to the University of Houston to pursue my master's degree in vocal performance, something that I wanted to do back in 2011, but I started teaching immediately after I finished my undergrad. And don't go to grad school during COVID. I don't recommend it. A few months after I started, COVID broke in March of 2020. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a classical singer. I got to learn about all
I was
this
in college
rap.
I was a freshman during COVID, so it's much worse. It can be much worse.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, like trying to, especially someone who's involved in like theater or music or anything that you really need to be hands on. COVID
I had
just
to
is a
build
killer.
a science project in the dorm room when you couldn't leave the dorms.
I had to record an opera in my bedroom with like the professor sent me like a green
Now you go,
screen.
Mark. Tell us how you just wrote a simple book in your bedroom.
I thought he was good. I thought Manny was going to say I had to sing an opera with my mask on. Oh!
I actually did my final semester. I did a Mozart opera, and I had a mask on, and I had my Apple Watch. It was La Finta Semplice, and I had my Apple Watch on underneath my costume. Was that?
You speak the languages you sing?
I had to study a little bit. When I did my undergrad, you only had to take a semester of a language for music.
Oh, if you took a semester, that doesn't mean you speak it.
Well, if you get a degree in vocal performance in undergrad, you have to have at least a year of Italian, German, and French. I managed to only do a year of German, a semester of Italian, and Italian is similar to Spanish. I mean, Spanish is my second language, so there are some similarities. German, like I said, I took it a year. I know bits and pieces. French is the one that always throws me off. Beautiful language to sing in, but once you start dropping consonants, I'm lost. So yeah, so when I was in grad school, once COVID hit, whatever, I was like, you know what? And before the COVID hit, I took a film music class with Dr. Kendra Leonard, and awesome professor. I had her for music history review, and she was doing a film music class, and we were, pretty much going from the silent era all the way up to recent stuff. We had to write 5 different papers of films based on different times. Yeah. And she's also a big fan of silent music. And if I remember correctly, she runs a website about silent music and like resources available for it. And from there, she knew that I was a big Warner Brothers buff. And she was like, kind of like leading me in a direction of like, really, about these cartoons, and obviously you're a musician, like really start getting into it more. And I had a professor in undergrad that said, you're a musicologist, but you don't realize it. So that was always bubbling in the back of my brain. So I'm watching the cartoons, I'm looking up the information on the songs in the background, and I'm rewatching them. I was like, oh, I'm picking up on the melody, and I start laughing because I'm getting the musical pun, and everybody's like, what are you laughing at? I was like, it's a cup of coffee, a sandwich, and you, and he's eating a sandwich. And they're like, it's a pretty song. Never mind, you won't get it. So so during COVID, I listen to YouTube a lot when I drive or when I work out, or I'm in the store. But YouTube Premium, money well spent. And I was like, let me find some Looney Tune content.
And a nice plug you slid in there.
Yeah, I know. So, give me a free year, please. And I typed in because I listen to like stuff about wrestling and cartoon and other cartoons and whatever, but there wasn't much Looney Tune content to listen to. So I typed in, whatever, Looney Tune history. I'm like, even though I know this stuff, it's just a good way to kill time. And that's what led me to Anthony's channel, Anthony's Animation Talk. And I was like, oh, and I listened to it. I was like, oh my God, this guy's Australian. I can't understand. No, I'm kidding. But
Trip of the Bobby, mate.
Do my best Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life, cobblers. And but I started listening to it. I was like, all right, it's pretty cool stuff. Some of the earlier cartoons. And I think around that time he was like in the late 30s, early 40s. So I was like, you know what? And I saw him posting on Facebook as well. I was like, let me reach out to this dude. So I messaged him on Facebook. I was like, hey, my name is Manny, blah, blah, blah. I'm a musician, and I'm also a huge, Looney Tune nerd. If you need any music help, like especially when you get to like Rhapsody and Rivets or whatever, I'm your man. So he messaged me back, and he's like, get lost. I'm blocking. No, he was like, He was like, thanks a lot. I
I
already have
enjoy this.
Yeah.
This is funny. We're just ribbing him the whole time.
And he was like, no, I have a music person who was Steph Stilley at the time. So hi, Steph, if you're listening, she always provides great musical knowledge as well. And then about a few months later, he messaged me again. He's like, hey, you want to come on for a recording? And this was right around the time I was finishing my master's. I was doing my comprehensive exams and all that. So he brought me aboard. And I think the first cartoon I did was Buckaroo Bugs. And I recorded it with him. And I think it was Blue Genocide. So hi, Blue. And the recording quality, I didn't have this setup. I had this microphone, but not this setup. I sounded like crap. It was terrible. But we were having a good time. So then he brought me, I think, to do Goldilocks and the Jiving Bears. And then it's just he's like, all right, cool. There's a good flow going here. It kept bringing me on. And, I was like, please, I have no friends. Let me know. But
next time we'll record your commentary.
And yeah, from there, it's, I enjoy doing the commentaries with him. And you'll never hear me say I'm an expert on the subject.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. Do you think you know more about a certain music? Because there are a lot of music cartoon historians. There's
Daniel
Greg
Goldmark.
Ehrbar, there's Greg Ehrbar, there's Daniel Goldmark, there's
You had to say Greg Ehrbar twice because it's not that many.
That's it. Yeah. But I've Anthony's told me to do this a few times, but I'd like to reach out to him eventually and see what I could do. I mean, a long-term goal of mine is obviously to finish watching all these cartoons, but really digging more into, possibly looking at, the archives of Carl Stalling. Or I know when I was recording a commentary recently for The Wearing of the Grin, looking at some of the archives for Eugene Podany. I always say that wrong. But so far I've recorded close to about 100 commentaries with Anthony.
Wow.
We love working with each other. I'm surprised he's not sick of it yet. But I guess the last point to this, and then we'll get to the beatdown, is I started thinking too, like, how did because again, like I mentioned how I don't come from a musician family. Nobody in my family does music, but my grandmother had a thing for it. And I also forgot to mention, I go to school. Okay, so this is I got it from my grandma, and fortunately my parents have always supported me, not so much my big brother. But so I go to kindergarten, and I'm in kindergarten music class at my elementary school, George Washington School 1 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I'm in kindergarten music class, and I just start singing Largo al Factotum from the Barber Seville, or, Figaro, Figaro, Figaro for most folks.
Did your head
And I'm just going, yeah. And well, actually, it was when I was singing, I think one of my classmates was throwing shoes and pencils at me, but it was I'm going Figaro, 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 and Mr. Walker, again, rest in peace, Mr. Walker, Jacob Donald Walker, thought that I was, mocking opera. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I like this music. It's nice." So, and again, with this vibrato voice that nobody knows where the hell I got from. So, leading into first grade, he was like, let me see what I could do to help this kid. So, during my lunch breaks, he would teach me, like he taught me My Country 'Tis Thee, the melody of it. I didn't know how to read music yet at the time. And I have it on video. I have to find a better copy. But the first time I performed in public was in my open house in my elementary school, November of '94. And I'm singing My Country 'Tis Thee again with a voice that people are like, where is this voice coming from? And, when I was a kid, it's hard to believe, but I had a mullet. So I think my powers initially came from my mullet, and then it just absorbed into my body as I got older. So, and then from there I got hooked, and, I've been doing music ever since. But it was in grad school that I made the connection. Where did I learn the Barber Seville from initially? And the way that I was specifically singing it. And I was, again, watching shorts one day, and I was rewatching Notes to You, the Freeling short from with Porky Pig. And I was rewatching the scene, and it's just my eyes opened up like, that's where I got it from. Because I had Notes to You on a public domain tape as a kid, and I watched it religiously. And I'm like, this is because I don't remember really seeing Back Alley Oprah as a kid or Long Haired Hair as a kid. I'm like, this is the one that I saw tons of times. And I was copying Mel Blanc as the cat, singing that aria. and it was kind of like my my nerd geek side and my musician side came together nicely and melded. And then around the time I started recording with Anthony, I genuinely enjoy performing, and this is what I want to do full time.
So
So
you
I
started
had a
singing
separate.
opera on there.
Was that?
So you started singing opera on Anthony's show, and you had to just cut him out.
Yeah. And trying to promote yourself. I admit I'm not the best at it. I had my own personal Instagram account, and I had one that was like Emmanuel Cruz tenor and blah blah blah, nice and fancy and formal. And I am like I said, I'm a classical opera singer or whatever, but there's people like you don't come across as one. I was like, why? So I was like, yeah, because you're not a jerk, like many of them are. And I had that separate account, and I'm like, I need to change something up. And again, when I started recording with Anthony, I was like, let me try a new name. So I'm thinking of like a gimmick, as we say in wrestling. And then I came up with the Tooney Tenor. And then I'm like, oh my God, that sucks. That's terrible. I erased it. I went back to Emmanuel Cruz. And then a few weeks later, I'm like, let me run with this. So I changed it back. And instead of doing like tune as in TUNE, like Looney Tunes, I'm like, it's too on the nose. And the tenor part already covers the musical side of it. So I wrote TOONEY, and I added the E specifically since my first name, Emmanuel, starts with an E. And then I was like, you know what? This is my gimmick. Let me run with it. And then Anthony was like, hey, do you want me to call you the Tooney Tenor Recordings? I'm like, sure. And from there, I started. It's a work in progress, obviously, but my other aspects of social media. But at the end of the day, I love music. I'm knowledgeable about it. I love, as I call myself, a multifaceted geek on different things, but mainly my love of Looney Tunes, The Simpsons, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Those are like the main things that I enjoy the most, and I just love talking about them, learning about them, and meeting new people and interacting with them. So
I wanted to say, Mark, that I told Manny that he should have if you do a spinoff, it should be called Hairless and in Tune with Emmanuel Cruz. And you spell hairless HARE.
And he was like, oh no, I was like, I love it. That when Kamden, when you
sent
me that, I was like, I
was
genuinely laughed.
head.
I was like, oh, I am so fine with bald. I've been shaving my head for 9 years.
Because I'm the only one here with a full head of hair. So
I know.
Yeah.
Mine's slowly falling off.
Yeah, I started noticing I was getting a spot up there in the back of my head. And I was 26 at the time. This is back in 2014. And I had a mullet as a kid. When I was an undergrad, I looked like I got shocked with static electricity when I woke up. And I started noticing, the hairline was receding in the thing. And I started watching Breaking Bad around that time. And I was like, you know what?
And you got
go for the Heisenberg look.
You got into drugs. Didn't see you for a while.
You went all out.
Music teacher turned drug overlord. But I shaved my head for the first time, and and everybody was like,
and we saw you out in the desert with no pants on.
Pretty much. I mean, well, that's a weekly thing. No, and there's no deserts in New Jersey. What am I saying? Maybe in New York, but yeah, I started doing that in 2014, and I briefly regrew it. And then 3 times I heard 3 different people say, oh, your hair is getting thin. One of them was my brother. So yeah, that's just him being the way he is. But after the 3rd strike, I was like, nope. And since then, I've been permanently hairless and in tune. Ah, ha, 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 ha.
Now, I guess it's time for me to rip on Anthony's podcast. And I have said this to Anthony before. Now, I like doing his podcast. I brought in Mark. I basically, the second time I did it, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to bring Mark Arnold here. So I brought Mark. Then I brought Mark again and again and again. Then I brought Robert McKenzie Jr. And I'm slowly ruining Anthony's ability to call it a review by bringing the children of the directors on the shows. I'm basically sabotaging the whole thing.
Sabotagey.
But I often wonder, I'm like, let's face it, with the exception of Devin Baxter contributing a few times, nobody on that show has credibility to talk about stuff and review them. So I'm like, These are 7-minute shorts that were meant to be thrown in the garbage at the end of the day, at the end of the theater day. And yet we're spending 20 minutes talking about them like they're The Godfather Part 3. And I'm like, well, let me finish. I'm like, who really cares? That's a valid point. I liked Anthony's podcast because there was a different reviewer. I know what you were talking about. He was called himself a critic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I thought he was kind of snobbish. Okay. I never listened to Anthony. I'm like, oh, one of these guys. The whole time I kept thinking when I kept seeing his name pop, oh, one of these. I'm like, all right. And I found out who Strum was. So I'm like, all right, I'll listen to him talk, I guess. I got time to fill. And I'm like, you know what? He's not as bad as I thought. And I'm like, then I listened to a few more, and I listened to one. I think I listened to some with Matt Hunter, who I admire from his blog, from his websites that are now defunct. Curse you for defuncting them. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm like, all right, I like it. And I listen to more. I'm like, all right, I really like it. Okay. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. But I always think to myself every time I'm doing these, and I'm like, who really care? And like in 1946, Friz Freleng wasn't thinking that we'd be reviewing these things on a YouTube video, and like people will be commenting about, I don't know what they commented on yours. I think they commented on mine one time. And someone said, I brought Robert McKimsey Jr. and I call him Bob. And he's like, why are you calling him Bob? I'm like,
because that's his name. That's what he wants to be called by.
Why aren't you calling him Robert? I'm like, do you not know that or my other favorite was he interviewed Jake Friedman, which I actually, one of the people who begged Anthony to do it. Okay. And we were talking about it. And the first comment was, he made the whole thing up for the Union story. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
But yeah, but I often wonder, I'm like, who really cares what we're saying right now?
Oh no, you're growing up.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, I know. But no, I mean, it's like, when you're younger, seriously, when you're younger, this stuff is your life. And so, yeah, you think it's the most important thing in the world. As you get older, yeah, you're supposed to not pay attention to it. And I'm sure Friz and Chuck and Robert and all those guys, when they did these, the most they were probably thinking of is maybe audiences appreciating it and possibly an Oscar, and that's it. They weren't thinking about people critiquing him even at the time, or much less 50 years, 80 years later. It's like,
rarely did these things get reviews or anything pushback. There's a certain cartoon, I cannot reveal any info on this. Mark, when's this going to be published? Maybe I can.
About a week or so.
All right, then no. But there's a certain cartoon that was so popular, which it was the first appearance of a rabbit. Gives it away.
Mm-hmm.
That was so popular, it got radio recreated on the air, live on the air for a radio show, and it was reviewed everywhere. There are certain cartoons that might get reviews. It's rare. Like I know a Wild Hair did. Gerald McBoing Boing did a lot. The UPA stuff did a lot. Steamboat Willie obviously got reviews of Three Little Pigs, but you wouldn't see, I don't know, Racketeer Rabbit get some review in the Times. So, but what I liked about Anthony's podcast, he wasn't just, I liked some guests better than others. Sorry, guests.
Clearly not me.
No, what I don't like is like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, all three of y'all, we were on the Hillbilly Hair one, right? And y'all were all talking about how you didn't like the first half of the cartoon. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think this is what we had intended, but this is fun. I'm going to keep doing these.
Yeah.
So I don't mean this in any harm, but I have to think to myself, why do we do these exactly? It's like, I often also wake up, I often think in my bed at night, I'm like looking around, I'm like, this whole planet was like, I have a hard time falling asleep at night. So I'll like think about random things. Like this whole planet was like, I don't know, a bunch of a bunch of molecules at one time, and now we're making giant Knickerbocker figures of cavemen that
I was gonna
made up from
all
a
I
TV
was
show
gonna
from the
all,
50s.
all I'm gonna say in response to all your commentary is enjoy it while it lasts. It may not be here after you're gone. So,
Right.
it will be here, but you won't. So it's like
Yeah,
enjoy it while you're here,
that's something I've been thinking about too. I mean, everybody's like, oh, you're still young, you're 35, but it's just again, as you get older and older, it's just like just appreciate these things,
Let me
and for the moment and
let
and
me
it.
let me
Go
just tell you
ahead.
something that what many people have told me, whether it's Caitlin McGurk or not Caitlin McGurk, sorry, whether it's all the people have told me. Once you've went down and Mark's down that rabbit hole, you're down that rabbit hole, I'm down that rabbit hole. Once you start buying books on things, and once you by the time you've filled your shelf, you're never going back. That's what they always say. By the time you've bought the 57 comic book rack, you're never going back. Right?
Yep.
You're like this forever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The only thing
And
I can say,
it may lead you not to get very many women.
well, women came later. I'll say that, but
What did Scott Shaw? I remember said in an interview that you were on the same podcast with Mark, I think, and he just said quietly, he says, says Scott, no, it was Earl Kress and Scott Shaw. He's like, did you two ever have girlfriends? It's like, I did. And Scott just quietly says, women just like the funny animal comic writers, not the superheroes. I'm like, okay.
when I was in high school and stuff, this is all my private stuff. I mean, my close friends knew I collected comics and stuff like that, but it wasn't like the way it is now where you can be geeking out,
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't I was ashamed of it. I just figured, it's none of anybody's business. So it's like I kept it all to myself. But if you came over to my house or whatever, you'd see boxes of comics and whatever. So
I've learned to clean and dust my own stuff because no one else is going to do it. So I've learned to dust my own shelves since I was younger. Because once you buy 20s, I have like Popeye books from 1936. So what are you going to do with it? Now, Manny, I wanted to say, I know your favorite character is this guy.
Yeah, Porky.
So I will gear it back to music just because I have a few questions.
Yeah.
So
sing opera for us.
No. Okay. First of all, I don't know if I said this on Anthony's podcast, but this is true. In the ancient days before everyone had a VCR, I used to plug in a audio cassette player into my grandmother's Sony TV set because it had a line in, so I could get pristine copies of at least whatever they were airing on the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show. And I tended to record things, and you sparked a memory, Kamden, by saying the Hillbilly Hair. Because tape wasn't like I didn't have oodles of tape, so I wasn't going to record like all 1,000 Looney Tunes or whatever. I just, in certain cases, I did record the whole episode, or at least what I thought was the entire episode. But in other cases, like Hillbilly Hair, I just recorded from the point where it's like, let's all square dance, and the rest of the cartoon. And it's not that the first part is all that bad. It's just I wanted that square dance part. There's another cartoon called Away We Go with Bugs Bunny and Columbus, and I just had the little bit where Bugs Bunny plays the banjo when they discover land, and he goes, "Oh, Columbus is the discoverer of America." You could probably sing it better than I can.
Can I interrupt you talk about something about Here We Go?
So that's what I used to do. I just take the music bits, and so it's like, and I realized, there's a lot of music in these. Of course, they're called Looney Tunes.
Can I interrupt real quick about something about Here We Go before I forget?
Sure.
I was listening to Anthony's commentary on that with Strum, which I think Strum is one of the people I really like commentaries of. I really like the ones where you two are together because they're really good to listen to also while you're shelving at work because they last about 29 minutes long. when you two are together, when you and Strum are together.
Tag team.
because those are always the longest. If you look at them, those are always the longest ones. They're about 29 minutes long, and it's about the most. And it's not about some really specific cartoon. It's about like a random Foghorn Leghorn, and I like it. But he says they mentioned in the middle of the commentary about Columbus not really discovering America as one of the facts. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if there's someone in England who doesn't know anything about American history watching this cartoon and just learning that for the first time.
Hey, people are here learn that for the first time.
That's
when I was a
true.
kid, Columbus discovered America, and that was what they taught. The end.
Yep.
You know,
There's
they didn't teach other. They didn't teach anything else. They oh yeah, there was that Leif Erikson guy, but we're gonna. Oh yeah, and there's that Magellan guy, but we're gonna. Oh yeah, there's they kind of poo-pooed everyone else. You know, and they just basically it was almost like
I was in school. When I was in school, we learned that Columbus didn't discover America, but then we had to do a play about American history, and one of the song was about Columbus discovering America.
Yeah.
Oh, Columbus. I mean, okay.
Sing, come on. Anyway, so I want you to do. Wait a minute. I want you to do. I love to sing it since you mentioned it early. Come on.
I love to sing about the moon and the June and the spring. I love to sing about the sky, blue or tea or two, anything with the swing into. And I love you. I love it too. I love it to sing. Luckily, I was a little warmed up. I was singing along to the Doors' debut album earlier today while I was doing some chores. It's been a while. Some Soul Kitchen, some.
I love to sing
Crystal Ship.
I love to sing it is one of my 18 ringtones on my phone.
Wow.
And main ringtone though is the Flintstones first season intro.
It's funny. We were talking about when I was in school 100 years ago. It's like in Columbus and everything. They never played "I Love to Sing It" when I was a kid. I mean, they might have played it somewhere, but I grew up in California. I never saw that cartoon. The first time I saw it, I think I saw it on tape, but it might have been the Golden Collection DVD. I mean, it's like a lot of these things that I read about, I never saw for the longest time, and it's just because they didn't play them. So everybody has luxury now of at least the 300 cartoons they do decide to release over and over and over. I would love to get them to release all 1,000. I do have a bootleg set. I've said many times before because I can't wait till I'm 95 to watch all these things. And unlike
you've already seen them all.
Unlike what?
You already saw them all.
Me?
Yeah, you watched them all, didn't you?
Oh yeah. That's what I was just about to say. It's like unlike Manny, who's only crept up to 1940, it's going to take you forever. I don't have much time in my life, so I watched all 1,000 cartoons. It took me about 4 years. So
I mean, I've seen a good amount of them.
Chronologically.
I'm thinking. Yeah. Oh yeah, chronologically. I mean, the ones that I've seen a fair amount of them. Either as a kid on Nickelodeon or TBS CNT, the Golden Collections of various ones. Yeah. I know that when I did start the binge, the ones that it was like Bosco. I saw all the Boscos, I saw all the Buddies, and I'm here alive to tell you about it.
Me too.
And the early Merry Melodies, the black and white ones. But I mean, a lot of the Seven Arts ones, for example, excuse me, the Seven Arts and the Patty ones, I saw them as a kid on Nickelodeon, but it's been 25, almost 30 years since I've seen a lot of those. And even some, like, I think it was yesterday, actually, as I was celebrating my birthday, I was eating some sushi, and just because Anthony was talking about Mary Had a Little Lamb, and we were messaging each other. And of course I was like, I love that scene from Drip Along Daffy when when Daffy gives Porky the drink and they start quoting Mary Had a Little Lamb after how powerful it is. And just and I'm rewatching it. It's been a while since I've seen that short, and I was like, God, I forgot how funny this one is. And of course in beautiful HD and all that. But there's, and especially now too with my musical knowledge, it's like I'm rewatching them and picking up on all these cues that Carl Salling did. And even though I know I have a list of the cues that are in these shorts that I use for part of my research, sometimes I look at the list after I watch the cartoon, so I could try to find as many cues as I can just by listening to them. And then I come back and I didn't pick up on that one. Or there's certain ones that like certain classical cues that I always go crazy for. I was like, what opera is that from? Or what symphony is that from? And I reference it later. Like, see, now I'm thinking of, there's a particular cue. I always forget it, but you hear it in Russian Rhapsody. I think you hear it a little bit in Hair Meets Hair, but I know it's from Wagner, but it's a ba ba bum bum ba 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 bum bum ba da ba ba. And again, I it's one of my favorite cues, classical cues that I hear in these shorts. And every single time I think about it, it's like, I forgot now. I'm going to go look up for it later. Oh yeah, it's blah de blah from this Wagner opera or whatever. So, but it's just like, or even again, it's just like you're listening to a song that you've heard a billion times and whatever, but just like there's another listen to it. Like I think it was like a salsa song that I really enjoyed, and I was re-listening to it lately, and there was like something in the percussion part that I never noticed before, and especially now with how high quality, the audio engineering and recordings are, but it's just like, holy cow, I never picked up on it. And then you have to rewind it. Oh, see, and of course I'm showing my age, I'm rewinding it, and I do that, if I'm talking to a little kid, hey, when you rewind it, you're like, why are you doing that? I'm like, never mind.
Because I'm local.
Here, let me call you back. I'm like, why are you going like
That's right. I guess you'd have to do it this way. Let me call you back.
Let me call you back. Yeah.
So
do a rotary phone while you're at it.
So when I'm always watching cartoons, and I've always Mark knows, and I was talking to him back and forth while I was doing it. Like I watched all the Three Stooges films, and I watched all the Laurel and Hardy films within like 2 months. And I just finished watching all the Columbia cartoons within like 3 months. Right? And there's about 400 of those. But the way I do it, the way I get it done is like, I'm able to finish it. I don't know how I was able to finish it in 3 months, because I'm up till 2 a.m. doing an essay on something, and I'm never watching cartoons. The way I do it is like while I'm eating in the morning or something like that. I might finish, they're 6 minutes long, so I might finish 8 of them if I have them playing through a loop.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always finishing them within a few months. So if you're watching 8 of it, if you're watching, like for example, if you watched one a day, it would take you 2 years.
Right. This is a question for both of you. When you watch old cartoons like that, when you're trying to watch a whole series, do you take notes on them or just watch them?
Depends.
Watch them.
Okay.
Unless I'm doing it for like a podcast or something.
Well, yeah,
like that.
but I mean, usually you're watching just one.
If I'm writing an article
cartoon,
right now, like right now, I'm writing an article about old time radio, which I found that the cartoon fans seem to like me a lot more because I like old time radio, which really sets me apart from the other ones. But then I like cartoons because there's about 100 different cartoon fans, but when you like old time radio, they immediately kick you. Thank you. Now I want to say thank you, Mr. Keith Scott, for providing me with some rare audio clips that no one has heard since, except for some old time radio people. These will be on Cartoon Research soon.
Cool. The reason I asked that is because when I watched the 1,000 Looney Tunes, I was just so enamored to watch them. And then I realized, because even Jerry Beck and Will Friedewald didn't watch them in order, and they split it up. If you read the book, one of them did the 30s and the 50s, the others did the 60s and the 40s or whatever. And so they didn't watch all the cartoons chronologically like I did, and what Manny's attempting to do. What I regretted, but I guess I can watch the set again, that's why I own it, is I wanted to write down little notes about the first time this joke appears, this song cue appears, this thing, because I was doing that mentally. I go, oh my God, when I get to a certain cartoon, this is the first time they ever say, I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque, but it doesn't say that necessarily in Jerry Beck's book. It'll say that quote's in there, but it won't say that it's the first time, because I don't think they even knew it's the first time because they weren't watching them chronologically. And since they don't have it that way on any of these golden collections, you don't get that sense of the progression of these things over the years. And it was fascinating. The one thing I did remember is that I think out of all the directors, Friz Freleng was the most arguably racist of the directors, because there's more in the censored 11, and it might be because he was a director longer, but also he just tended to dwell on that type of stuff, it seemed like. Too.
There's that one cartoon, I don't know what the title is, it's more racist than any of the censored 11 though.
Yeah.
Going to Heaven on a Mule.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, Anthony hates, and with all due, it's exact. I know exactly
right.
why.
And I always say this about the censored 11. Okay, Cold Black, I'll admit that there's some parts to it that make it a gold standard animation wise. But what is the appeal of any of the other ones?
The other censored 11, you mean?
Yeah, what is really the appeal and interest of any of the other ones other than Cold Black? I might be able to.
I think it's the fact that they're censored.
Because I read
Yeah,
somewhere.
the taboo
Now,
of it. That's why.
what?
It's just
It's
the fact
'cause of
that
the
they're
taboo.
censored. Yeah, yeah.
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 But I don't understand what is the godforsaken love for those cartoons other than Cold Black. I actually do. I mean,
As a musician, there are certain I know, like with Goldilocks and the Driving Bears, there are some aspects of it musically that catch my
right.
attention. And I would say that, and also parts of the music of Clean Pastures, like the performance of
Yeah.
Swing for Sale. I believe it's the Four Blackbirds that do that, and just other music that were used in it. I think just, just the thing with how Carl Stalling and Milt Franklin arranged and orchestrated the music, just it's musically so pleasing to the
Okay.
ears.
I can see
But
that.
then when I talked about it in I did not Cold Black, I did Clean Pastures for
Right.
Anthony for the Sense 11 thing, and I was reading
That-
excerpts from Daniel Goldmark's book as well as Christopher Lehman's book, talking about, yeah, the music sounds really neat, but they weren't using, like, they were using images of Louis Armstrong and Fats Waller, but were they specifically using pieces of music by those artists? No, they were like, oh, these are famous Black artists that we know. Let's use music that sounds Black. And again, leading into
that's by the way, I wanted
stereotypes.
to clarify something. I never actually considered this with Anthony's podcast until I was listening to the Censored 11 commentaries. And that's where I was like, no offense, Manny, no offense at all. But I was like, what good does it do to have a bunch of white people talk about the Censored 11? What good does it do to
I'm
have
Latino,
an
by the way.
Australian and
Yeah, I
a
was
New
gonna say he
Yorker?
ain't totally
I
white.
ain't white. No soy,
Right.
no soy blanco. Yo soy latino,
Right.
para que tú lo sepas.
He's
But I
mono.
didn't know that at the time, in fairness to me.
Yeah.
Right?
My yeah, the way I sound, it's
Right. I knew
I've
that you
had
were
those
from New York.
instances
I knew
where
that way you were from New York. So,
New
and I knew that
Jersey.
you were from New York, and like,
Get it right.
so
big difference. But yeah, English is my first language, but I've had times where people
But
come up to me,
they-
they're like
still-
speaking slowly in English. I'm like, I understand everything you're saying. Like, what are you doing?
but that doesn't matter. What point does it have to either have anyone who's like, what is the point to have not someone who's not, what good does it have an all not Black audience talking about a cartoon that
I know
clearly,
that, well, there's Huey Nelson that he did
yes,
chime in for a few of them.
he did
Yeah.
change that, because I know that Thad also made that same exact comment to him.
Which I agree with 100%. I mean, I'm not saying, well, yes, I'm a minority as well, so I should, but it's not like I have a good
Right.
source of it's like when I'm watching stuff about Speedy Gonzalez, like someone said,
Right.
well, you're Hispanic, you could talk about this too. I'm like, I am Hispanic, but I'm not Mexican American. I have family from Puerto Rico and Cuba, and I could understand some of the aspects of it because there are some cultural similarities that Mexicans have with Hispanics from the Caribbean. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, talk to
But I
someone
mean,
Mexican
let's
American.
face it, half of their Black comedy comes from Amos and Andy.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so
And all the minstrelsy and vaudeville and all that.
it comes
baggage
from
that
Al
comes with that.
Jolson, Amos and Andy. It's so that's what I was thinking. I'm like, and Justified, Anthony agreed with me too, right? And Justified, and I was like, because the other reason though is not really him as much as, at what point do we need another video about the Censored 11? There has to be on YouTube, there has to be 500 different clickbait videos saying, look at these random Looney Tunes cartoons no one has seen before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I will say though that, and this is something that Anthony was talking to me, like when he was implementing it, it was like, first, let's just get these out of the way because he didn't want to dwell on them any longer. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like exactly what you were saying, Kamden, about. I was like, oh, these were locked in the Warner Brothers vault and blah, 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 blah. Obviously not having the proper context of, United Artists putting the shelf on it in, 1968 and what was going on in history at the
you can
time.
see them easily on YouTube.
Exactly. The whole tab, like Mark was saying, the whole taboo of it. But I think that especially the video that he did, that he was just like, this is a brief history of the Censored 11. It was done with nuance. It was done just mainly, these are the facts, and then go from there. And I know that one of the comments that I read, well, one person was like, why is he talking about the music of it? I was like, I don't know, maybe because it's a musical cartoon. It's a merry melody, especially. But one person was saying, the whole argument is like, oh, why are we imposing modern day values and modern day judgment to something that was done in the 1930s. And I'm like, there are newspaper clippings and reviews contemporary to the time period, especially like the I forget Angel Puss and I think the NAACP pushing back on coal black in particular. And I'm like, guys, this was always seen as, or and I'm trying not to get into the whole can of worms, but some people are saying, oh, they're shoving diversity down our throat, and that whole argument.
There we go. That's where I was like, that's where I was really like, Anthony, you really want to do this, because all the right wingers are going to go after you.
Oh boy. Well, he's out in Australia. It's gonna take a while for them to get
Okay, I will say this. Okay, you asked an interesting question, Kamden. Other than coal black, is there anything of merit in the other 10, right? Is that basically it?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Is there anything?
Well, okay. Is Jungle Jitters one of them? I don't know the censored 11 off the top of my head. I think
that's one of them.
Okay. All right. Stupid cartoon, pretty bad. Okay, yeah,
terrible.
But even as a kid, I used to imitate, because they just showed it on regular TV when I was a kid.
They did show that one. That
when they have, the main guy that's kind of like a goofy ripoff, and he goes, "Hope, hope, hope." I used to imitate that all. I liked elements of some of these things. I didn't care about the racist part of it. It didn't. I just figured that's what they did back then.
We didn't know any better. Yeah,
that's what I thought too.
And even my dad said, but they still didn't show when I was a kid. Bugs Bunny, Nips the Nips, and a few others. And the reason why, I didn't even know about them. And in San Francisco, there was a TV station called KTVU Channel 2. It's ironically a Fox station now, but anyway, at the time they used to show like everything. And they showed Looney Tunes afternoon and morning, blah, 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 blah. And then one time they had 10 o'clock news, and they said on the 10 o'clock news, and this is years before they called them the censored 11. So we're talking probably late 70s, early 80s. It's like, we're going to talk about Bugs Bunny cartoons you'll never see on this station. And I go,
really?
Because I was like fascinated to see any cartoon that I've never seen before. It didn't matter if it was supposedly racist. I just wanted to see cartoons I'd never seen before. That was where my mind was at. And so they show it, and they show the clips, and they show the worst clips, the good rumor man, coming out, and Bugs Bunny, everything of Bugs Bunny, Nips the Nips. And it's like, I turned to my dad and I said, did these actually come out? And he goes, yeah, that was common, because my dad's still around. He was born in 1938. He saw them in the theater when they came out. He remembers World War II. And he goes, yeah, Japanese were bad guys, and they held no punches on calling somebody an offensive name, like even Nip, which is in the title of the cartoon. I'm saying it just for the sake of saying the title of the cartoon. I'm not going to be so Bugs Bunny N-word the N-word, then it sounds even worse. Anyway, but it's just, that's the name of the cartoon, like it or not. But yeah, I was just, and that's where it opened my fascination to it. I don't think it must have been the late 70s, because it was before Of Mice and Magic came out. And so as soon as Of Mice and Magic came out, that's where I turned. I said, is this in the filmography in the back? And it's like, there it is. Oh my God, it's the one that they don't play, and I'm like, how old was I? Like 12 or 13 when that book came out. I was like, because you couldn't see these things. And then they did put it on the Laserdisc in the first tape collection of Looney Tunes. Well, oops, and then later they said, oops, I shouldn't have done that, and now it's censored 11,
Can I say something about this? I like it how they say we won't play this on TV, yet they plays the worst clips on TV.
Yeah. Well, at the time, that was only in San Francisco. Home video was just coming out, so they didn't think people would sit there and tape it, but probably somebody did, and of course now it's readily available on YouTube. Toddlers can turn it on. It's like, I want to see Bugs Bunny.
Right. That's where I hate it. That's where I hate it. They're like, Warner Brothers will never put these out, or the Disney will never put out Song of the South. I'm like, hey, I can send you a clip of I can send you that archive.org print of Song of the South right now. You can stop complaining. It's right here. There you got it. Home
you
video.
Want to see my Blu-ray? It's in that cabinet right back there.
Right. I'm going to tell you now, every time I go on Facebook, there's always a bootleg copy of Song of the South for sale in the ads.
Yeah.
It's not like it's hard to find. None of these things are hard to find.
I think
but I also know that every year, it feels like every year, some like Vulture or New York Times or someone will post some weird article about Censor 11, and then people bring it up again, and then Cartoon Research Facebook page will go up in a blow. I'm like, why have I not left this group again?
Yeah, I believe two things. One is, and they're both kind of diametrically opposed. I believe that we shouldn't shove these things under the carpet, and they should be discussed. However, at the same time, I think they've blown the censored 11 way out of proportion to their significance in film and the significance, and there's plenty of stuff that doesn't get censored that's out there.
Native Americans.
It's like if you want, using Song of the South, it's like, well, you can't get a Song of the South easily unless you go the bootleg route, but you can get Band of Angels. You can't get, too many cartoons of blackface, but there's a Marx Brothers film with blackface that's readily available. It's
Jazz
like
Singer.
all this stuff is, Jazz Singer is considered, and then it really sucks when a lot of these things, like the Jazz Singer, are historically what's the word? Significant. Thank you. That, it's the first talkie film, or at least part of it is, and it's like, so, do you suddenly say, well, let's talk about the second talkie film, and ignore that first one? But, anyway.
Yeah. But then I always find it interesting though, with MeTV and stuff like that, is that they'll cut out the blackface gags, but, they seem more than fine with putting the Indians running around. I do find that interesting though, that they're very specific about picking their battles.
Yeah, it's not consistent. One thing you learn going through history is there's inconsistencies, there's hypocrisy, there's things that are forgotten, and there's other things that are overly remembered. And it's like, I always get annoyed, actually, as a white man, I'll say this, when people say, because I'm white, I don't have any sort of credence to say anything about it because you're not the one being offended. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily accurate either. I can certainly say my opinions. It might not necessarily be right, but it's my viewpoint based on what I've seen. Are most criticisms of these cartoons justified? Sure. Are they all justified? No. And but in society, it tends to be like this all or nothing thing. It's like, but we don't censor all of them. We kind of cherry pick what we censor when it's appropriate for the time.
I think it depends on the audience too. I think MeTV is a very different audience than people. That's why I was asking about the Don Rosa things. Because one of the things I questioned about that was, who is the audience spending I think those Fantagraphic books cost like $200, right?
Yeah.
For that large. Doesn't the audience who would spend $200 already know those stereotypes exist? So then isn't it whitewashing at that point?
Wait, I'm watching Manny rise up to the occasion. That just threw me off. I'm like, the corner of my eyes.
Sorry. I rose too. I have one of those moving desks.
Okay, all right. Sorry,
it just threw me off. Sorry about that. Should have warned you. I'm moving my desk now. Beep.
Okay, what was the?
Because if you're gonna say, let's say, hey, here is Warner Archives putting out the complete Popeye. Let's say they complete skip Popeye a la mode, right?
Yeah.
Well, the audience for that disc probably already knows that cartoon exists.
Yeah.
So at that point, it does seem like a Warner's home video thing would be whitewashing it.
Yeah.
They did release that when I bought that Blu-ray. That was the first cartoon I went to, and it's funny. I was watching it with my mother, and she's like, because I'm like, I've heard of Popeye Alamo, but it was the first time I ever saw it, and my mom was watching it. She's like, I remember watching this in Puerto Rico when I was a kid. So this was sometime in the 70s when she saw it, and I'm just like, it's like, oh wow, yeah, like you.
That's how well they distributed cartoons right there.
Excellent job back then. Yep, and or as she calls them, Popeye. Is it Popeye, Oliva, and Bluto? There you go. So
yeah,
Alamos, Oliva, yeah. Olivia or something like that, like
I-
Olivia.
I know that, but the thing about it is, I hate it when people complain about a disclaimer. Like someone said as a review of the Tex Avery Volume 1, it says, "We are tired of being lectured." And Thad smartly said, "Why are we going through this again? You got the cartoons, live with it."
Yeah, I don't like disclaimers, but if it helps get it released, I'm all for it.
I don't mind
Yeah.
disclaimers. I don't mind
Yeah.
disclaimers. That puts things in context.
Yeah,
That's what you kind of need.
yeah,
And plus, by the way, most disclaimers, if you press that little skip button on your remote, they'll usually skip it.
yeah.
So,
But yeah,
is that a reason to give a 1-star review for anything?
yeah, no. So I mean, it's like I don't like them, but I put up with it because it's like, to me, it's like,
Yeah.
But I guess people are dumb and they don't necessarily understand that something is a product of their time. I mean,
No.
when we started, Manny thought something that I used to think about Disney cartoons. It's a similar type thing. You thought all those Boscos were done in the 60s. When I was a kid, I was a kid mainly in the 70s. I thought all those Disney cartoons like Snow White and Peter Pan, or Pinocchio or whatever, all of those were done in the 60s because they're all lush and colorful and blah, blah, blah.
I must have been smarter than both of you.
Well, you had access to
Yeah,
information.
you grew up with the internet at your disposal.
You had Encyclopedia Britannica. You had to drive to the library and look it up. So, which is exactly what I did. So I looked up Walt Disney in the Encyclopedia Britannica because I wanted to learn a little bit more about him. And it says Disney is known for films such as Snow White, 1937, and I go, that's older than my dad. What? Yeah, like what?
I remember those days going to the Pathmark, which is one of the supermarkets here in New Jersey and New York. And I remember going to Pathmark sometime, like again mid 90s when I was a little kid, and they had like a big display case, or as you can see behind me, I actually have the what do you call those things, like a little display stand I made out of a cardboard. I have one of last summer they released a workout supplements, Ghost with Ninja Turtles. So it was like has the pre-workout and helps you lift up the weights, but it had like all the Ninja Turtle colors on it. So but they had like a big display.
I got the rack, he's got that. Where's yours?
I got some records over there, I got some other stuff there. But I remember as a kid like seeing that big huge cardboard display of Encyclopedia Britannica, and I was like, "Oh, mommy, can I buy?" Because again, I'm 7 years old reading an encyclopedia instead of being normal and watching Looney Tunes and listening to classic rock. And I remember flipping through it and reading. It's like, "Oh my God, this is so great!" And then you have to buy letter B, and then it was even more expensive. And,
yeah.
Mommy, I can't buy. It's too much. It's too much.
That's why we didn't have an encyclopedia, and that's why we had to go to the library for it. Unlike today, where there it is, right there.
There's your library is right here. There you go.
And nobody uses it. Everybody's too busy on TikTok, and it's like Wikipedia and Google are one site
one
over.
Click away.
TikTok is dumb, but that's all I'm gonna say.
But I'm just saying, purposely a dumb site.
Right.
Bringing it back to music, let's direct this show.
Go back to music. Yeah.
All right. I pulled out $4 because I wanted to show them to see. I don't how much into music. I didn't bring out my Carl Stalling disc because they're packed away, and so one of this we mentioned. And I'm friends with both, so is Kamden, but and I've had them both on my podcast, is Mousetracks, the story of Walt Disney.
Mr. Hollis, of course, I'm a regular visitor to his house just about every 2 months.
So are you aware of this book, Manny?
That one I've never heard of, but I mean, it looks interesting.
It's a really good book.
Let me clarify to the audiences again for the 100th time. Manny, Tim Hollis is a collector of cartoons and record, and I'm having both of them on Anthony's podcast to talk about a cartoon that inspired a record, which we're scheduling that right now. But so we're basically Tim runs a cartoon toy museum in Birmingham too.
And he's written a lot of other books. This is their own. This is the only book they've co-wrote. So anyway, that's
so far. I think they're working on another one.
Yeah, they are, but I don't know. Okay, so here's another one that both of them are aware of. It's the Golden Age of Walt Disney Records.
I've never heard of that one before.
Yeah, this is a great book. It has like everything, all the records and the
Ooh.
prices, at least as of about 20 years ago, because
And it
prices
has pictures and
yeah, it's in color. And even if you have my copy, you have the 1969, 1970 Disneyland record catalog thrown in. But
Nice.
that's me. I just threw that in there. Anyway, here's another one. I don't know if I know these people, but it's a great book. The Disney Song Encyclopedia.
I've never heard of those guys either.
Yeah. And I haven't read this one, but it talks about every song by its name and where it's located and a little history by each one. It's not really exciting if I hold it up, but very text heavy. But anyway,
No pictures, no deal.
I think other than the cover, yeah, there's a couple of pictures, but for the most part, yeah, you get your 101 Dalmatians picture in the cover. So, and then the last one I pulled out, this one talks about like everything else, the cartoon music book.
I have that one. I just haven't had the opportunity to read it yet. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to reading that one. That was one of my COVID purchases.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are others. Everybody say, well, what about? It's like, but
I'm getting one out right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I saw that you had I didn't finish listening to it, but you had Orrin Scott on the recent episode, and I love the work that he was doing on the filmography. Yeah. So I
assume because I haven't checked he has all like these type of books too, not just ones specifically. I mean, he's still connected to animation. Is there a book about Simpsons music? I know there's Simpsons episode logs, but I mean,
another valuable thing besides this is one of the things that this is not a DVD specifically, but this is also a CD. Earl Kress's wife gave this to me.
Oh yeah.
But there are booklets in here that make it almost a book in itself. Like it's like a 15-page booklet about the history of White Curtain.
And I believe, if memory serves, Earl Kress was, like everyone else, working on a number of projects. I think he was working on a major book that never officially got published.
Yeah, you see.
So this is as close as you get what Kamden's showing here.
Yeah, Earl's wife had like a box of these, and she gave me one of them.
Can she give one to me? Anyway, so is there any books you have, Manny, that are in your collection that discuss music, or even any other things? You don't have to
y'all are missing a big one, but I can't find my copy of it, which is Daniel Goldmark's book,
Hollywood Tunes for Tunes.
Yes.
That one.
Okay.
So I'm in the process of trying to get another bookshelf, because I mean, right behind me you can see it. I mean, I have a mini fridge too. It's really nice. Went over here.
That's the sign of pride, dude. I have now completely run a bookshelf. I got 3 books in the mail coming to me.
Yep. Well, the thing is, because I moved back from Texas to New Jersey, and I finally got through the process going through all the books, and I've had this bookshelf for a few years. I think I got it at, I don't know, Walmart or whatever. And it's not sturdy enough for me for my liking, especially for my records. Oh, yeah. And I took my records out of a tub. I don't have a huge collection, sadly, at the moment. I have about, I think, close to about 100. I actually just purchased a few days ago. Because I mean, right here, what do I got? I got, like, reading off of it. I have Billy Joel. I have Steely Dan, The Doors, their debut EP that LP that I was just listening to. Some opera records behind me. I just got finding. You know what? Let me grab them. I'll show you which ones I just got recently, animation related.
All right, Kamden can show tunes for tunes in the meantime. So what's in that book, Kamden?
Basically, it's the history of Scott Bradley and Carl Stalling.
I don't have that one. Who wrote that one?
Daniel Goldmark.
Okay. Is that readily available, or is that who published it?
I think it's still in print.
Who published it?
I think it's definitely still in print. University of California Press.
Okay.
I bought it on Amazon for like $20.
See, I don't have everything. You think I'd have everything, but that's there. Everybody's always missing something. That's the rule of thumb. Every collector is always missing something that somebody else has. So it's like,
right now I'm missing the biggest book I'm missing. We were talking to Mark, who's I gotta get that Ivan Earl book still.
I sadly was I was reading something recently about when vinyl was taken over by CDs. I think it was actually the year I was born, 1988, when CDs officially took over. I mean, when I grew up, I was raised on CDs and cassettes. I do remember though, when I was in preschool, we used to dance to a record of I think it was Greg and Steve, and it was called the Good Morning song. Good morning.
Oh, you were to say
good
Greg and
morning
Tim, and I'm
to-
like, what?
No. I didn't think that would fly in a 1992 pre-K class, but
No, I was talking about Greg and Tim, Greg Ehrbar and Tim Hollis, and I'm like,
oh,
what?
I'm thinking of something. For some reason I'm thinking of something off of Adult Swim. Something
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know what you're
Morning
talking
Zoo
about.
or
I think I know.
Yeah, my bad. No,
Okay.
Greg and Tim, yes, I do. And I actually, because I do like Disney, but I know way more about. I have a friend actually who was I went to in grad school, Christine, excellent singer, good friend of mine. That she's a huge Disney aficionado. And I got to tell her, I'm like, do you have these books by any chance? If you're not using them, can I borrow? I mean,
Yeah.
she lives in Chicago now, but I'm like, but I'll say, hey, you know about these? But anywho, with the records themselves, I mean, I started collecting vinyl a few years ago. I mean, I remember, I think the first record I ever got that someone gave me was, Rumors, Fleetwood Mac, great album. But I'm like, you know what? The majority of the music I listen to is mainly from like the 50s to the 80s, and they were originally issued on vinyl anyway. And I'm the kind of person like, oh, look, they're releasing Abbey Road at Target, or, something from David Bowie or from Michael Jackson, Thriller, and all that. I'm like, I'd rather get the original, try to get as close as I can to the original album if it's still in good condition. A, I'm going to pay way less money, and B, I don't want to listen to a digital remaster that they just slap onto vinyl. But with these that I have right here, I actually animation related.
Okay.
I saw this one. I grew up watching Hey Arnold on Nickelodeon, and I saw that this was released.
I didn't know that came out.
Yeah, this was. I think this is a reissue. They made 400 copies, and I got the version of it that it's half orange and half green. And coincidentally, my favorite colors are orange and green because I loved Nickelodeon as a kid. My favorite Ninja Turtle is Michelangelo, and it all makes sense. But this
Halloween
is
pumpkins. No,
pretty much, yeah. But yet I still have it in the cellophane, so that's from
interesting.
Hey
Okay.
Arnold. I got
Okay.
that one, and from the same website, which I can't believe I don't remember it. Ren and Stimpy, you idiot.
Yeah, I have
So
that on CD. So.
Yeah, and this one has the Ren and Stimpy colors on it, red, pretty much your patriotic, red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
And this is sort of animation related, maybe by proxy, but as I mentioned before, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan. And I got this one in 2020 where they finally released the score by John Duprez of the first Ninja Turtles film. The amazing score by him from 1990. And I'm finally seeing that film in the theater on Wednesday because March of 1990, I just turned 2, so couldn't really go to a theater to see the film. I have the second film over here, Secret of the Ooze, same thing from John Duprez, who later went to work on Spam-A-Lot, if I remember correctly. And then this one just came out about a month or so ago for the third film. The film sucks, but I love the music. And this was sitting next to them. Definitely not animation related, but of course a Stone Cold classic. Songs of the Key of Life.
Isn't I'm a huge lovely?
Sir, I mean, of course, I've been listening to Sir. I mean, but there's so many great, deep cuts on there. Pastime Paradise and As Another Star.
Right.
Now I got. But I'm thinking, I was like, man. It's
does it have the 45 in there too, or the EP?
Yes, it does. It has the 45 right in there.
That's why you have to have it.
I got that one on. I got it on. I think eBay a few years ago.
Yeah,
still in great condition. Comes with the huge booklet and.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, all right. I was like, I was born too late. I was.
I grew up with it, so hey.
Yeah.
Anyway,
one of the joys of records and cartoons, though, is like Mark said of audio taping things, is that unless you could afford an 8mm projector, there was no way to see these things other than if they were on TV, or maybe if they were reissued in the theaters, so people would buy the records of the original soundtracks.
Yeah.
Ah, nice.
I don't even have that one.
Yeah, or they would buy this and the Huckleberry.
I do have that one.
This,
yeah,
I think are my 2 favorite cartoon records
because
they're brand new scripts written by the original voices.
I will say this for Manny's sake. The reason why I embrace CDs more than vinyl, I love those vinyl things, but a lot of times you find them in the thrift shop and it's and it's like I so wish, and I begged this for years. I tried to get Greg Ehrbar on it. He said he was like this close in getting it to Hanna-Barbera Records reissued, The only one that's ever come out. Ooh, cool.
Nice.
I have that one. The only one that's ever come out is the Pebbles and Bam Bam Christmas record, which it's a start, but it's like all those. I'd love to
Uncle
see all
Remus.
those Colpix records. I'd love to see all those Hanna-Barbera records things come out and stuff like that. I know they say there's no market for it, but when there was a market for it, i.e., when CDs came out, like about that time of the picnic basket, they should they should have reissued all those albums at the exact same time.
They did. The second volume is just Flintstones record albums.
Yeah, but it's not all of them.
Do you really, Mark, be honest with me, do you really want the Flintstones reading Hansel and Gretel on CD?
Yes. Ask Greg Airbar. He will say it louder than I just
I have Fred I have the one where Wilma reads Bambi. Or like the one where it's like Gilly Gorilla and Alice in Wonderland.
To bring it to The Simpsons for a second, all that stuff again should have been reissued when like Meet the Bartman was being a hit. If they can have big hit songs with old cartoon characters, well, they weren't old then. New cartoon with cartoon characters, certainly they could have brought out all the old Flintstones albums all at the same time. And it's like, it bugs me. You're a Popeye fan. I try to get pristine copies of old Popeye albums, and it's like, I don't want to pay $200 for an old Popeye album. I want to pay like $5 or something, or $10, maybe
Which
30.
One is that?
What is that? I can't tell. It is
Woody Woodpecker.
Okay.
An original album from it, an original recording from it. And then I also have June Foray's copy. I have June Foray's, the Rocky and His Friends record.
Yeah, I have that.
I have the record. I have June Foray's. From June Foray's collection when I got June's collection, I have 2 copies of that record. One of them is the actual record, and one of them is the music-only track of them recording it.
I don't think I have anything in here.
Of the orchestra recording the music, the recording session of the music that being done.
I got the Drew Carey Show soundtrack. Is
it? I mean, CD. I have this one over here, but that's the same thing. I purchased the. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I did buy it on as a record. I also did buy it on CD, and I still have a good amount of my CDs sitting around in my closet.
I don't have everything organized here. This is just random stuff that I was listening to recently. Do you have Ron Dante's Funhouse?
Wow.
this he actually has tracks from, if you can see on here. It's tracks from Charlie Chan and the Chan Clan, because Ron Dante, who sang for the Archies, sang those songs too, and they sound like Archie songs anyway. And that's on here too. Yeah, Sugar is on here.
And of course, I'm thinking of the Simpsons scene where the ice cream's melting on the beach. Tom and Jerry and Terry the Tugboat.
They even carried it over onto the CD.
Tom and Jerry albums really strange. I always like the fact that we have now Jerry back on audio from his cartoons in stereo presenting Sugar on the radio.
Let's see, what other junk do I have over here?
I always found it strange with you said because I know they did those Simpsons CDs, but they did it years, I think, after they did. Manny, do you remember when those came out?
Like Simpsons Sing the Blues and stuff like
that?
No,
the ones with the original recordings from the show.
That was like 96, 7-ish.
4 of them, I think. There's
I have
Yellow Album and Songs in the Key of Springfield. And
Songs in the Key of Springfield, and
I think Simpsons Sing Out or
something like that.
Testify, I think was the 4th one. Yeah,
that was probably because they were collecting stuff from like seasons 9 and 10. So this is like late 90s.
That's
early
the one
2000s.
thing that they should really do, because there's still really good songs in that show that they should really like do another one of them.
It reminds me of, I never got the CD, and again, this is right around the time I first got into this hobby, so like probably 2001, 2, 3-ish. But they had a CD where I think it was either like Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes, or That's All Folks, or whatever it was. I know they had Bugs, Daffy, and Porky on the cover.
Yeah.
And let me guess, Camden has it. He's about
well, I mean, okay, there's a Carl Stalling project. Then they did a sequel, Volume 2. Then they did a 2-disc set. That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and
then there's a Bugs Bunny Superstar, or Bugs Bunny in Concert or something that was re-recordings, but it was still very good.
Well, I have
And there's a Tex Avery one too, and I have that too.
That I didn't. I actually never heard of that Tex. On which one
That
is
Tex
that?
Avery thing is still in print, and you can buy it for like $8 on
Nice.
Amazon.
You have it with a cardboard sleeve. Mine is in a
Yeah, you can buy it. Literally, it's on
plastic
Amazon.
back, anyway.
I think it literally costs $8, still in print.
In actually in grad school, I took advantage of looking up the like I was a World Cat, and I'm trying to find a
Ooh, I don't have
Rainbow
that.
Parade.
I don't have
Nice.
that. Bootleg.
And I
It's
managed.
it's a DVD. It's a
Oh,
special
okay.
DVD
Alright.
set.
I
don't know
managed
why
to
I
get
pulled it up.
I think it was from I might have been the University of Chicago or somewhere, but they sent the Scott Bradley project or something like that, or the Scott Bradley disc, and it had stuff from Tom and Jerry and from some of the Tex Avery shorts.
Mhm.
And again, during COVID, I had to send it back. I was like, wait, what am I supposed to do? Like, are they going to get it? Am I going to get fined? 'Cause I ripped it onto my computer. And
Another
had to-
good CD, by the way. Good, I guess it's on tape, and I still have my tape player too. But yeah, Mark, I have a tape player.
That's fine.
But
Yeah,
Mark,
we're like,
do you have
okay.
Chris
I
Freeling's
do
book?
too.
Do you have
I'm
Chris
older
Freeling's
than
book?
you, Chief.
Mark, do you have Chris Freeling's book?
Which one? The one with
The
the
art animation art of
cassette
Chris Freeling.
the one with the
where
cassette
he
tape in
signed
it?
about half of them.
the one with the cassette tape in it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
that's a good cassette tape.
Mhm.
The tape in that one where they have the original recording sessions to the Bugs Bunny show in it.
Yeah.
That's a good tape.
Mhm. I have a copy of it on bootleg DVD because Greg Ford made a copy of it for me. So
Yeah. I don't have a VH because I have no reason. That VHS tape and that thing, that documentary, that thing is the only reason I have a VHS player.
oh.
And my family has a VHS player apparently of me teasing my brother. Apparently off camera. Apparently they left the camera there. It was apparently me saying Easter, and apparently the whole thing is me picking on my brother. And they said that.
Actually, Kamden, that's a good question. Manny revealed that nobody in his family had really been interested in this type of stuff.
No.
It just so is your brother Kamden? Is your brother interested in cartoons or anything like you are?
Nope. None
Is
of
he
my family member are. I had tapes from like my sister had all these different VHS tapes of things, and one of them was the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie.
Yeah.
So people would just give it to her, and I would watch that, and that's why I got interested in cartoons. My parents liked cartoons as a kid, but I didn't get any information. My dad, interesting fact that my dad did work on something is he worked at a company where they ran radio stations across the country. But I got no influence from it. But music was not always playing around the house.
Yeah.
So no, and none of them are good at art. So I just picked this all up myself. Which I did want to ask one question, Mark, particularly you, Mark. Do you love it though when you learn about facts about pop culture and then you watch it in a cartoon and you see it? Because I love it like when you see things like I always listen to old time radio and you always see new references to old time radio.
You mean understanding an old reference that you didn't understand before?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Especially when you thought the wrong thing for 40 years. It's like
Exactly. That's one of them. One of them is when they reference. Lucky Strikes. So it's like, for example, in the Columbia short I watched this morning is so round, so form, so fully stuffed.
Yeah.
Now, what else do you think about when you think of something that says row round, so firm? You don't think of a pack of cigarettes.
Well, I guess I did because I was like into old time radio too. So
Right.
It's a wee little boy. Cigarette advertising was still allowed on television until I was like 4 years old. So it's
I remember seeing like the big billboards on the buses for Newports or going to like restaurants or whatever, and they used to have the little machines that like the little
but Lucky
dispensers of
Strikes was already out
cigarettes
of business by the time you were growing up.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm thinking more like Camel.
Yeah.
I remember Joe Camel back in the day in the 90s with his cigarette and his sunglasses, and by the time I got
and
to
that's
like
who
high
he was
school,
trying to
was
appeal
phased
to.
out. Oh yeah, exactly. It worked. No, I'm kidding. I don't smoke.
You just pull out a cigarette and you're just smoking. You
here you go.
just burn it out on your microphone.
Hold on, fellas.
Yeah.
Virgo.
My dad never smoked, but he did fill me in on things, and he even said things that are a little off color for a kid to learn, but I still learned them. This might be new to Kamden. I don't know about Manny, but you've heard the LSMFT, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Of
real
course. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. And
yeah.
Sing,
Do you know what the jokey one that people used to say?
No.
Loose straps mean flabby tits. Now you learn something, and it's like my dad says, yeah, in the 50s, that's what people used to say. So, well, even as a kid for me, it's like Adidas, they used to say what that stood for. I don't know if you know that one. All day I dream about sex. So it's like that's that one. So
yeah, I heard that one as a kid.
Yeah, so, but yeah, the Lucky Strike one is always kind of funny because they would always say LSMFT, like and it's like, yeah, all right. But they talk about things were so clean and virginal. Nah, they said
they weren't.
They said dirty stuff back then.
Say,
it just wasn't.
I always like, so Strum and I are always sending each other off color jokes, right?
Yeah.
And I sent him a picture of apparently in one of the Columbia cartoons. It goes by really fast, but they went pretty down and dirty in like a one quick still. I think in one of the parrot cartoons, parrots like open the doors and you just see a woman bathing, and I'm like,
yes,
like,
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like in, like the rescuers when they're in the little cockpit or something.
I love it.
There's like
I always tell people
a centerfold that goes by at the blink of an eye. Of course, people going the frame. There it is.
Or even
you weren't supposed to see that.
Bugs Bunny and the Three Bears.
When they banned that film, when they censored that film, that scene of that film, I'm like, no one is seeing that when they watch that movie. If they don't know it's there, they're not seeing it. So
yeah.
You have to really look forward to see it. So I think when they censored that scene on TV, on tapes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, but that makes no sense.
Yeah, and they also censored the scene where Jessica Rabbit's thrown from the car, and I think she splays her legs, and there's no underwear. She now has something there, or they just blocked it out.
But isn't it like a shadow? Isn't it like
I don't know what they did now, but originally, but you can't see it unless you're frame.
That's why I'm not really actually against censorship on TV of the racist stuff, but I am against censorship of like the violence or something like that. I'm like, they wouldn't when you were a kid, Mark, they wouldn't censor the scene of the coyote taking an aspirin.
The first things they didn't censor that. They censored Underdog taking the super energy pill. They didn't show Roger.
No sense.
They didn't show Roger Ramjet for the same reason when I was a kid, and then Super Chicken somehow was shown. I'm just saying the ones that were the drug abusers on cartoons back then. But then the other one, the first time I knew of censorship was about 1975, 76. And it wasn't talking about censorship for like the censored 11 or whatever. It was about violence. There's a big kick in the 70s. And suddenly, and I think the short is called No Parking Hair. Is that the one where it's Bugs Bunny against the big giant construction worker and they're trying to build a freeway? Okay, that's the one that all of a sudden they censored like so much footage out of it that when you'd watch it on the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show, it didn't even it wasn't comprehensible anymore. And it's like, why are they even bothering to show this? It doesn't make any sense. They cut out all the explosions. They cut out anything that was remotely violent. So I mean, you'd see like the guy holding some pipes, and then the next scene you'd see some pipes flying around. It's like, huh? And then suddenly Bugs Bunny had his home with the freeway going around it, and it's like, okay. And the cartoon's only like 4 minutes long after they cut everything out. That shows you how
it's like
short that was.
Rabbit Fire in the Hunting trilogy where they cut the shot, him shooting the gun.
Oh yeah,
they can't show him pulling the trigger.
No,
but they can still show Daffy being shot. So
that was when I first really got annoyed with Looney Tunes, that they would cut everything, and sometimes they do censorship where I didn't notice. Like Long-Haired Hair is one that they censored, and I didn't know that they cut the Mr. Jones, that whole scene gone. But I didn't know it was missing because it was a good enough cut that it didn't matter if it was in there or not. It was just shorter cartoon. It wasn't until you mentioned the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie that the scene was in there, and I go, "Oh my God, where'd this scene come from?"
It-
You
it
know,
is
and
the
it's
same
like,
thing.
so
Can I
at
say
that
this Bugs
point,
Bunny
I was
Roadrunner
like, I
movie?
want to see uncut cartoons. Anyway, go on.
The scene with the boulder in Robin Hood Daffy.
Yeah.
I had no idea that scene exists until I saw that cartoon, because I was so familiar with it from the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie.
Yeah.
Which they cut that scene out for time.
Yeah, they cut things for time in Bugs Bunny Roadrunner, but they didn't cut it for violence. So
No,
yeah,
but they cut
yeah.
things for time all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And I'm like, wait, this is a brand new scene. I'd never seen it before
yeah.
when I first saw that cartoon outside
Yeah.
that movie.
hmm Now, I don't know. We're jumping all over the map. We've been talking for almost 2 hours, so I'll just kind of wrap it up here. But Manny, do you have any other final thoughts or anything else you want to say? And do you ever make personal appearances, or are you just showing up on Anthony's animation talk?
Let's actually literally, do you make opera appearances? That's
Yes.
At the moment, I'm just still trying to figure out how to proceed with my performing career. I mean, for right now, mainly, I like to call myself a musical mercenary. I'm like, hey, you need somebody to sing for this choir, whether it's a church choir, community choir. I'm exactly, and I have the bald head too, just like Elmer now. But I'm actually studying with a teacher on Tuesdays through Zoom, a teacher that's out in California as well.
Mhm.
Just because I expected myself to stay in Houston after I finished school, but COVID screwed everything up. And
Mhm.
fortunately, I'm back home, but I'm learning some new music to get some auditions up and running. And there's other things that I'd like to explore, not just opera, but again, like saying interest in salsa, doing some other things. I I know I need a lot of work at it, but I would love to possibly do some type of work in voiceover. But at the end of the day, I just see myself performing. What it is specifically, I still don't know yet because again, it's just COVID screwed everything up, and just trying to figure out,
It's
just the way
over.
it's pretty much. I mean, a lot of us musicians, we felt like that during COVID, and sadly, and I think it's a load of nonsense too. I was talking about it with a buddy of mine. How, like, I have some my friends that I went to grad school with. A lot of them were like Camden's age or a little bit younger or a little older, and they're auditioning. They're doing the young artist programs and everything. And I aged out of a lot of those things at 30,
Mm.
and it's completely ridiculous because there's a lot of talented classical singers that they vocally just don't click until, and a lot of singers in general, your voice doesn't mature really until you hit your late 20s, early 30s. And they put the arbitrary age limit onto what well, you're like, I'm thinking of auditioning for like do a competition just to see where I can go. But this is my final year of eligibility. I'm 35 and I never competed in this before.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, it's like I look at it this way: if I'm singing somewhere, if I'm creating content with Anthony, or eventually I'd like to create my own content that's either music or geeky stuff related.
Called
And
Hairless in Tune.
hairless and in tune with the Tooney Tenor. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I like to see myself do. And I mean, as for that I've been listening to, Mark, I've been listening to this podcast here and there. And I was very flattered that you invited me on here, and I'm hoping I didn't. I hope we pass the audition. In my case, and it would be cool if I could get to talk. Not just animation or music or anything. And
Sure.
it's yeah, and again too, like I said, with I mean, you'll never ever hear me call myself an expert, especially on animation. I'm just an aficionado. I
Mhm.
enjoy it. I know a thing or
Aficionado
two.
is the term I use too.
Yeah. And with music, I mean, some people are like, well, you are a master of music. I was like, yeah, it's just a piece of paper. But at the end of the day, it's like I call myself, I'm the eternal student. And I'm
Mhm.
always looking forward to learning new things and just talking about stuff I'm passionate about. And
Mhm.
it's music, and it's being as I say on Anthony's channel, being a nerd about
Mhm.
various subjects. As our in our case, we're all fans of theatrical animation. And
Hmm.
it's always fun to talk about because
Mhm.
like with some of my closest friends, most yeah, like my close group of friends, like I know tons of people from all different jobs and places and whatever, but like my core group of closest friends I consider like family, they're not talking about Looney Tunes. They're not talking about, Stevie Wonder. They're, like like I one of my buddies that I'm actually gonna, he's gonna treat me to dinner tonight for my birthday. But he was like, I was like, dude, like, why do you hang out with me? Like, I'm not the, because, I still have that baggage of, when I was growing up and, like, oh, you were into comic books, you were into cartoons, or especially, I have friends that are really big into anime and manga. It was like, oh, I was like made fun of it, and now anime and manga are huge. And I said, like, like I'm openly nerd, like, I wear my Looney Tunes and Ninja Turtles gear and my music stuff with pride. And he's like, because you're you, like you are the genuine article. You don't hide away from the stuff you enjoy. And I even said, I was like, yeah, but it's weird. And a lot of people say, yeah, but Manny, but you're weird in a lovable, friendly way. You're not weird like, let me call the cops on you kind of weird.
Yeah.
And it's great now that, that we are now at that age that
I've never been made fun of for being, and I think I only remember one time in my life where I've ever been made fun of for liking cartoons, and that one person never did it again because everyone else got mad at him.
Yeah, it's because it's I would say in the past 15 years has become more socially acceptable. I mean, like, I was like wearing like Ninja Turtle shirts and like having my animation books with me in high school. And I grew, where I grew up on, the fourth largest city in New Jersey, and it's a rough area. Yeah, I'm wearing a Legend of Korra shirt. You got the Comic Book Authority, you got Chuck Jones. See, we're a bunch of nerds. But I went to actually.
Mark, where'd you get it?
I went to a party. I think it was, they had a party just before I was leaving Houston, like my buddies from grad school, and my friend, like a few of my friends, their boyfriends were there. They were talking to me, and they were like, "Oh, we hear that you're like a cartoon guy," and I'm like downplaying, like, "Yeah, I know a thing or two, whatever." And then it just started flooding me with questions, and like I'm answering them, and they're like, "Oh my god, like this is okay." Just to get into in the conversation, I'm just like, where were all these people 20 years ago?
Exactly.
Like when we were being, like you had to hide that in shame, or of course, like sometimes I'll see on Instagram or whatever on social media, it's like these, these really gorgeous women like collecting, comic books and Pokemon cards and this and that. And again, I'm like, where were these girls when I was a kid? It would have made life so much easier.
We're lucky.
Oh, before we go, I do. Kamden asked this earlier, and it just reminded me. Oh, by the way, I'll say this again. Yeah, a friend of mine named Joe gave me this shirt years ago. So I think it's from I think it's from Graffiti Design, so you can probably find it. Anyway, here's something, and you mentioned Elmer Fudd. It popped in my head. It's like that I didn't understand for the longest time. Manny probably knows because it's music related, but I didn't know. Is Corny Concerto, and he goes, and the music goes around and around, and it comes out here. Yeah, and I didn't know there was a song that they sing that exact lyric, and it's like years later I hear this song, and it goes, the music goes round and round and comes out here, and what, and it's like I did that double take like that because it's like there was one of those moments that I'd seen Corny Concerto a dozen thousand times, and it's like I didn't know that song. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
The whip-wing rhythm of the woodwinds. I mean, that's one of the greatest lines ever. If I ever have to talk about a saxophone or a clarinet, but the whip-wing rhythm of the woodwinds.
That's one of those cartoons I remember seeing on TV actually too. Before I ever got any DVDs, I never saw the Elmer Fudd part. They would only show either the duck part or the Bugs Bunny part.
Did you understand that it was a Fantasia parody or no?
No, because
I figured they cut it that much. Like probably escaped the radar there.
Because they would only
Dean
show
Taylor impersonation.
Because my theory about why is that they needed time to fill because they don't have enough time anymore on television because of advertisements to be able to show so many cartoons. Right. So they would just put two pieces, like one little piece.
Interesting. All right. Well, Does anybody have any other final thoughts? About we can
I
probably
have
go
one
on for two.
question.
Okay, one question. Okay, go ahead.
Manny, do you ever listen to yourself on Anthony's podcast?
I do, and there are plenty of parts that I'm like, oh my god, what the hell am I talking about? Or and I can, or it's funny. I actually can tolerate hearing myself talking on
I have
Anthony's
done
channel
grown to it too.
more than hearing myself sing. I despise hearing myself sing. Or like, I was playing back a recording that I did. I was auditioning for Les Mis not that long ago, and I was playing back the recording. Or I don't know, you guys are probably the same way. Like if you're playing it around other people, if I'm playing
Well, we
like the
don't know
stuff I
how
do,
it's like to play recordings of each other singing, so
well, or it's singing, or just like hearing yourself talk, and you play it and you start going like this.
yeah.
And then like, especially
Going,
my singing, like
yeah.
parts people, like you see them getting emotional, and I'm like, it's that bad, right? No, it sounds so beautiful. Or like, oh my god, like I sound like such a dweeb and blah blah blah. Like, wow, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Like, all this
I-
stuff about blah blah blah. So it's, I mean, I
I
listen to it, but
hosted
there's
a-
parts I'm like, oh, it's just,
I
I
hosted a
even tell
show
myself,
with Tim
shut up.
Hollis. I hosted
Is
a
that-
radio show where I had Tim Hollis on, and I was about, not a radio show, but a project, school project. It was about Birmingham local kid show host, and I played rare audio clips and everything. I'm like, just get to the clips, because I was showing it in class to everyone. I'm like, no.
Just the self-consciousness, it kills you in the
I
process.
know, I actually liked, but eventually I heard it enough to where I'm like, all right. Because after you heard it so many times, you're like, okay.
I'm totally used
Yeah.
to my own voice now, but when I was a kid,
Yeah, and
I sound all vaguely like this. It's like, geez, what's wrong with that kid?
I have interviewed, I actually have counted how many interviews I've done. I've done over 300 interviews, okay, on things.
Mhm.
Whether it's like, interviewing senators to interviewing, I've interviewed yoga teachers to senators to Christian to Catholic jerks to everyone. That's the nice way I can describe a racist human being. But
Wow.
okay.
Well,
But I've interviewed everyone, and so you got used to it. But I listen to my podcast. I also listen to this podcast when it comes to it. And I just say, what did I do bad last time that I can do better this time? Only for me to forget the next time.
Don't interrupt. Anyway, I know we're all guilty of that. Don't worry. All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. That's a good note to end it on. Well, it was great having you, Manny. It was great having you again, Kamden. And we'll have you both again together or separately or somehow in future. Maybe have Strom on here too. And that pretty much wraps it up for another episode of the Fun Ideas Podcast. And we will see you next time.
bye, everyone.